Hey, for you, those of you on Zoom, we do have folks still coming in the room, so we're going to wait another minute or two.
Where would you like us to go?
If you don't mind, if you want to see the board, is that good?
Where are we going with these? I'm sorry.
We'll just put them right. You can also sit in the comfy chairs up top if you want to. Good one. Or you can come sit beside me too. We'll begin starting in just a second. There is a little QR code on the screen. We have a survey at the end of the presentation. For those of you that just arrived, we do have one survey question before we start. If you want to scan it and take it before we start. At the end of the meeting, we do have a survey where we'll be logging the results and ultimately presenting those results to council. This survey question is just to get a general feeling of where people are at in the room. And we will go ahead and get started. I'm hoping all of those on Zoom, let me admit them all. We do have about 30 folks on Zoom, and it looks like probably close to 35 or 40 in the room. So we'll go ahead and get started. You're here for the Rock Creek Parkway and Coal Creek Drive intersection public meeting. So if you're not here for that, you're in the wrong place. We do appreciate you joining us and providing feedback. The purpose of this meeting is to give you information and get the feedback from the public, and the council will use that feedback in their decision making. So we'll be presenting the feedback here today. Also, after the meeting, we'll have a survey up online for those that weren't able to attend the meeting. They can review this presentation and also provide feedback via that way. And Christine and I, well, I'll start with introductions first, sorry. I'm Brandon Richards. I'm the Public Works Director with the Town of Superior. And this is Christine Katz. She's the project civil engineer, but she's the project manager for this project. We also have our consultant here, Kimley Horn. We have Tyler with Kimley Horn, the lead, and Jeremy right there's also working on the design from Kimley Horn. So they're the design consultant here, helping us with the presentation and getting feedback today. Christine and I do have business cards up here, so you can feel free to grab those. We also have our contact information at the end. Ask us any questions, message us if you missed something. If you like more data, please let us know. That's what we're here for. If you haven't had a chance already to do that survey, please do it now. I'll be skipping this screen and we'll show those results at the end. Right, Tyler? Okay. We also have, I think I saw our mayor here. Mark's here attending, so thanks, Mark. We listen to feedback. We probably have some other council members watching, and they'll be listening to feedback too. We will go through the presentation. If you have questions on a slide about what that data means or represents, please stop us. If you have generic questions, we will have public comment at the end, and we'll also be able to answer any specific questions and general questions at the end of the presentation. So we ask you to hold them to the end. But again, if you have a question about what does that slide mean or that doesn't make sense to me, please stop us and feel free to ask that question. Sorry, we still got people coming in Zoom, so I want to make sure I get all those admitted. Yeah. And if we run out of seats, feel free to sit in the few comfy chairs up there too. All right, so the Rock Creek Parkway road construction. So as most of you know, we did Rock Creek Parkway, from the pedestrian bridge near McCaslin to Indiana last year. We did a full reconstruct. And we also included some geometry changes. We did some restriping for the whole corridor. We also removed the right turn lanes at South Pitkin Avenue, and we took away some right turn lanes throughout the corridor with flex posts, whereas the ones at South Pitkin were permanently removed with curb and gutter. I will share that Christine and I are both residents of Superior, so we not only work here, we live here. So we have vested interest too. We both drive this road daily. I live in Rock Creek. Christine lives in Sagamore. So we are very familiar with the corridor as well and have our own thoughts and opinions. But our purpose tonight is to get the feedback from the public and share that with the council, and that means a lot in their decision making. So we're originally going to do this project in 2027. The citizens passed the sales and use tax in 2024. That's allowing us to expedite this project and move it up to this current year. So our goal is to finish this paving project this year. So when I say the paving project, you see the red lines on the map. They go from South Indiana Street to 88th Street. So our goal is to repave Rock Creek Parkway from where we stopped last year up through the 88th Street roundabout. Once you go east of that roundabout, if you've lived here for several years, you know that section of road's already been repaved roughly 6-7 years ago. That section of road was repaved. So we'll stop right where that repaving ended. So with the renovation of the road and the reconstruction, we wanted to look at the intersection of Coal Creek Drive. And those of you that have lived here for a while probably know that there was discussion about a roundabout or traffic signal at Coal Creek Drive several years ago. I did not live in Superior at the time, so I wasn't part of those discussions. But the reason we're reviewing this now is because we will be reconstructing the road. If we're going to do any intersection changes, now is the time to do them. Christine and I did read all of the Facebook input. So I don't know who in here is on Facebook. There's about 75 comments between the town's post and a post on Superior Community. We do log that, so we see where people are thinking and what they're feeling. The vast majority of those comments were vehicle related and car related. So when we do look at the corridor, obviously as drivers, we think about it from a car standpoint, but we also try to look at it from other user standpoint, pedestrian and bikes. So I did want to share a clip from a couple council meetings ago. A resident shared some feedback on their use of the intersection.
Rock Creek Parkway and Coal Creek Drive is particularly dangerous for children and pedestrians. On my block alone, there have been 4 near-miss incidents just within a few weeks involving pedestrians, children, and parents walking to school and using the crosswalk with flashing lights. Despite the presence of these lights, vehicles either fail to see them crossing or simply disregard the warning, creating a dangerous situation for everyone. The current design flaws include no physical barriers to protect pedestrians from traffic, inadequate speed reduction mechanisms to slow down vehicles, only 1 crosswalk with flashing lights compared to 2 crosswalks with at least 6 flashing lights and median barriers at the Pitkin intersection, which is a very similar intersection to ours. Okay, that's the issue. So what are we asking? I'm asking for immediate action to be taken to address this issue before a serious injury or fatality occurs. That's really why I'm here, because I know you guys care. It's a current hazard. The intersection at Rock Creek Parkway and Coal Creek Drive is particularly dangerous for me.
Okay, so I wanted to share that with you. Obviously, that's one person's perspective and opinion, but I did want to share that we have heard from residents regarding pedestrian and bike safety at this intersection too. So that's part of the reason we're looking at the intersection at this time. And for those of you that are still coming in, there are some chairs. You can sit up the chairs up there. Yeah, those guys won't bite.
Brandon, can you please summarize what was in the video? They couldn't hear it on Zoom very well.
Oh, okay. So that was at the, what council meeting was that? It was in January 27th. Sorry, I can't read. So at the January 27th council meeting of this year, we had a resident come or on Zoom express some concerns about the intersection of Rock Creek Parkway and Coal Creek Drive. That resident may be here today, but they shared some concerns related to pedestrian safety of crossing that intersection. This person had school-age kids that attended Superior Elementary, and crossing the intersection felt like they had some near misses, and their neighbors did as well. So I wanted to share that because that person didn't know about this public meeting upcoming, but they shared that feedback, and we wanted to bring them.
Thank you.
Oh, they are here. Sorry, hopefully it's okay we shared that.
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
The Pkwy intersection, the one up by Purple Park, that's up the hill.
Yeah, so Pitkin is the first 4-way intersection you get to when you come off of McCaslin down Rock Creek Parkway.
And does that seem to be working with more lights and
So
is there feedback on whether those improve?
Yeah, the question in the room is if the intersection changes at Pkwy Avenue. So I'm repeating it for those on Zoom. When we do, at the end of the meeting, we will have a public comment session. So at that time, we'll ask everyone that wants to make a public comment, go up to the podium. And we'll also do that for questions. That way folks on Zoom can answer your question. I'll repeat this question we just received, which was if the intersection improvements at Pkwy seem to be working. From my perspective, I think they are. I haven't heard any complaints about the crossings at Pkwy where we added the 6 RRFBs and we took away the right turn lanes to shorten the crossing, which we'll talk more about in a little bit. Many of you probably participated in the 2023 Rock Creek Parkway public outreach when we looked at the corridor as a whole. I did want to share the most popular feedback we got when we asked what multimodal features should be a top priority for the town when looking at this roadway. The number one feedback we got was intersection safety features for people walking and riding bikes. If you aren't familiar with the Rock Creek repurposing study, that is still on our website where we did a detailed analysis of the corridor as a whole, and be happy to share that with you or more specifics if there's any questions. So our goals when we look at the corridor, so our goal tonight is to get feedback from the public. Our goal when we look at the corridor is to create a safe and efficient corridor for all modes of travel, and also to make fiscally responsible investments that serve all travelers. So that's our overarching goals when we look at Rock Creek Parkway and really any roadway or corridor in town. All right, Christine's gonna take over.
So as part of this study, we looked at 2 things for pedestrian safety crossing roads. One is how far a car, sight distance wise would be when you're crossing this, up to 6-lane road. And you can see here that if somebody's crossing at Coal Creek Drive, they're going to have to look for the average car traveling 42 miles an hour, because we've found that people speed on this road. You would have to look past the 88th Street roundabout to see that car that would intersect you while you're still just finishing crossing the road. So, I mean, you're looking really far, and not many people look that far down the road, right? So this is just really illustrating that pedestrian safety can really be improved in this corridor.
On that data, what's that time change to if you're standing on the median? Like you've gotten halfway across the road.
So the question is, what's the time change to? It would probably be half the time, half the distance if you were standing in the median. And the reason we picked 42 miles per hour is because that's the 85th percent speed on Rock Creek Parkway. So that means that 15% of the cars are going faster than 42 miles per hour, for reference.
Did you say 6 lane?
Well, at the intersection, there's a left turn lane and a dedicated right turn lane in this location. So there's 2 lanes in each direction, and then those 2 added turn lanes.
Not anymore.
Well, not anymore, right? So this is part of the 2023 repurposing study. So that this is part of the reason that the right turn lanes were eliminated, to reduce part of that, and we'll talk about that, the benefits and the pros and cons of those. So the other thing that we're looking at is speed. So as Brandon mentioned, there's a lot of speeders on Rock Creek Parkway, and the data shows that at 40 miles per hour, if you're a pedestrian or a bicyclist, you only have a 20% chance of surviving a crash with somebody traveling at 40 miles an hour. And it keeps increasing as you get slower and slower. So the speed limit is 35 miles an hour. So we want to get people as close to that as we can. So we're hoping to also slow people down through the corridor. So as part of this 2023 study, we actually had somebody go out and observe peak hours. So they found the ultimate peak when they had the most queued cars at the Coal Creek Drive intersection was during the AM school rush, so 8 to 8:30. And turning left onto Rock Creek Parkway off Coal Creek Drive had 3 cars maximum queued before being able to turn. So that's what was found back in 2023. And then we just have a summary of the speed data. So we took it in 2023 pre-construction, and you can see that it really hasn't slowed down much. So we really want to make those crossings as safe as possible. Yes?
Did you happen to observe an average amount of time it takes to make a left turn?
So the question was, did we observe the amount of time it takes to like a left turn at Pitkin Avenue?
At 8 to 8:30 a.m.
So we do have some level of service data coming up at the end, so if we could maybe check that question.
So some common measures that are out there that can reduce speeds and improve safety, striping, that's what we tried. And you can see that it had minimal impacts on speed reduction. Signage as well. Enforcement, I know we've had a lot of comments and questions around, can we get the sheriff out there more? What's been found is that added enforcement really just has short-term and minimal impacts, so it'll slow people down when they see the cop, but if they don't see the cop, they're not gonna slow down. So we wanna try to make a holistic change that can make, people will slow down and drive more mindfully. Speed humps, they're very effective at reducing speeds. They're not really ideal for larger roadways like Rock Creek Parkway. They're more for neighborhood type roads. Raised crosswalks and intersections. That's kind of the same feeling as it's more for smaller roads that whereas it would really slow, it might affect level of service on Rock Creek Parkway if we went that direction. Changing road geometry is effective at reducing speeds. So this is including bulb outs, lane removals, large islands. A lot of the curb and gutter work, like the bulb outs and the large islands, can be quite costly. And then lane removals, that's kind of what we were presenting in 2023 with the 1 lane in each direction, and that wasn't seen as popular. So, but it can be very effective at reducing speeds. And another good one is a roundabout, can slow people down going through it because people are yielding and moving more mindfully through the intersection.
Yeah, and a bulb out is, so the question is, what's a bulb out? So it's basically like a curb jut out that comes into the road. So it basically narrows the road width. It'll come out into the road surface. So I know a lot of residents here, you live in Superior, but you probably travel to Louisville a lot. You've probably driven via Appia where they did take a lane away. And we do work closely with their public works department. So we got the data from their lane removal on via Appia, and that did reduce speeds about 4 or 5 miles per hour. So roughly 10 to 15% speed reduction on via Appia. I will say, I know some comments on Facebook were talking about lane removal. That is not something we're looking at this time. The council has not asked us to bring this back up or revisit it. That doesn't mean they wouldn't in the future, but that's not on the table at this time. So we're looking at repaving as is now and looking at the intersection of Rock Creek and Coal Creek Drive specifically.
Why? If it was effective at reducing, you not think about lane removal now?
So the council made a decision last year. Obviously, if there's thoughts and input about that, we'd like to collect it if that's something that folks are interested in. The question in the room was about why we're not looking at a lane removal. So it was really investigated very hard last year, and we heard from the public and got the feedback and got the study. So I think that's why we're not bringing it back up at this time. If it is something you're interested in, please share that feedback as we go through this process and share that feedback with your council because they are listening.
Well, then just one quick clarity though, because your survey, the picture in your survey for the roundabout only shows 1 lane through, so.
So we will talk about the roundabout in just a second. So I'd like to hold on that question.
From those two things already.
Sorry, we were, when we talk about the lane removal, we're talking about the whole corridor. So the proposed, and I'll talk about it on the next slide, the proposed, is the proposed roundabout is a 1 lane roundabout. So we have 3 proposed improvements to the intersection that we'd like feedback on from you. The first is a 1 lane roundabout. This can reduce speeds, improve safety, and improves turning movements. There's a dedicated right lane turn removals and improved crossing signage. That's adding more of those flashing lights to cross the road. It improves safety improvements for pedestrians and bicyclists, but you can see that it has minimal impacts on the speed reduction.
What part of the right-hand turn lane is?
So that's removing those flex posts and moving curb and gutter to take the lane away. Yeah. And then the traffic signal is a standard traffic signal. So it would improve safety for pedestrians and can improve turning movements at peak times, but it can also create reduced level of service. You know, if there's no one in the intersection and you're at a red, that can get frustrating. And then that would also include those right turn lane removals with a traffic light.
Just
Yes.
a quick question before we go further. Do we have the money for these improvements?
So we will talk about the budgets in a little bit regarding it.
Certainly,
Yeah.
so, okay.
Yeah, so, sorry.
For the traffic signal one, the second bullet says includes right turn lane removals. So the Indiana, does that include turn lanes at that signal?
So I'll ask you if there's any more questions, raise your hand and we'll ask you to come to the podium because we have about 40 some people on Zoom and they can't hear if you're not at the podium. So the question in the room was the traffic signal, removing the right turn lanes. Would that include removing right turn lanes at Indiana? And the answer is no. So when we did a Rock Creek Parkway repurposing study, we looked at the turning volumes at every intersection. So we only removed right turn lanes where the turning volumes didn't justify a right turn lane for design purposes. Christine's going to get into more of that why we did remove those right turn lanes, and it is to bring those pedestrian crossings into compliance with standards. So basically the crossings out there right now are about, with the 6 lanes, I think they're like 98 feet, almost 100 feet in length. So those crossings on a road with 35 miles per hour is not a design that meets any current standard because it's not a safe crossing. Even if you put RRFBs, it's too far of a crossing to be considered safe to design standards. So by removing those right turn lanes, we've shortened that distance up to get within standard with an RRFB. So that's just meeting the minimum standard for a crossing length signal. At Indiana, we have a traffic signal and there was a higher right turn lane volume, especially going into the school. So that's why those right turn lanes were not removed, because of the volume of cars that made the right turn and the traffic signal as the pedestrian crossing safety that you need, because it gives them a dedicated crossing person. So that's why those right turn lanes aren't being removed. And Tyler's up to present.
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Tyler Leffler. As introduced previously, I'm with Kimley Horn. I'm one of the design engineers that's been helping the town out discussing these different improvements. So my portion of the presentation tonight, I'm going to discuss with you all the different considerations that we've made with the different intersection types. We're going to focus on vehicle and traffic safety, pedestrian bicycle safety. We'll also talk about emergency evacuations as well as the cost. So if you're thinking about any questions on those, we're going to get to those. So just keep that in mind as we work through that. The first topic that I'm going to discuss with y'all though here is the traffic safety and the traffic impacts to these improvements. To understand that, we've kind of talked about this concept of level of service. That's a traffic engineering term that discusses how people are moving through and the way that vehicles are flowing through an intersection. The way that works out is basically looking at how much delay somebody could experience at the intersection. So up there on the screen, you can see we have level of service A through F. That's not like your typical report card where F is failing and E and D. It's just how they're categorized. Majority of the intersections that folks interact with on a given day function at that level of service C and D. What that means is that the person that has to wait the longest to make their movement is in that category of, for example, level of service C, they're waiting between 15 and 25 seconds. It doesn't mean everybody's waiting that long. That just means that the person that waits the longest is waiting in that time frame.
And I'll just add that these wait times are at peak hour. That's how you measure level of service. So we wouldn't measure level of service out there right now because there's not much traffic. You could turn easily. So that level of service is at peak hour, which on this road is at 8 to 9 a.m. in the morning during school rush hour. That's when our peak hour is.
Yeah. Thank you, Brandon. So looking at the different intersection improvements, so as it exists out there today, the Coal Creek Drive intersection functions at a level of service C, meaning that so the movement that is causing this to be categorized as a level service C is the left turn movement out from Coal Creek Drive, either heading north or heading south. So those people are the ones that are experiencing delays in the peak hour between that 15 to 25 second range. It makes sense because it's two-way stop controlled, so those people are looking for folks that are crossing Rock Creek, so you have two different kinds of flow that you have to judge a gap to get across. The roundabout improvement, and we're going to get into, I'll actually have some slides that we show what these improvements look like after we get through the different considerations. The single lane roundabout functions at a level of service B, so it actually is an improvement over the existing intersection configuration today. Reason being is that with a roundabout, you don't have anybody stopping, everybody's yielding. So the average person that is going through there during the peak hour actually experiences less delay with the roundabout. The traffic signal does have a level of service of D, meaning that there is potential for increased delay when interacting with that. That makes sense, I hope, for most folks as you encounter a traffic signal with red lights and everything. There's pauses that we have to take for safety reasons with red light and clear times for the intersection. So it does potentially increase the delay for some folks with the traffic signal. And then last but not least is the turn lane removal. That still functions at a level of service C. Reason being, again, is we look at this for the movement that is the most delayed, which is those left turns. But I will note that we did look at the through lanes. So coming through the intersection on Rock Creek Parkway, east and west, those during peak hour do function at a level of service A currently today, meaning that folks are experiencing 0 to 6 seconds of delay when interacting with those lanes. If the right turn lane was to be removed in the peak hour, it would still function at a level of service A, meaning that folks who are turning from the existing through lane aren't going to increase the delay in a expeditious way. And so obviously that does have different impacts on safety, and so we'll discuss that piece as well for overall safety for vehicles with the different improvements. So with roundabouts, we typically see around an 80% reduction in injury or fatal accidents when implemented at an intersection. That's because we actually cut the number of crossings. You cross another vehicle at an intersection, conventionally 32 different ones. A roundabout only has 8 because of the circular nature. You don't cross as many people, and the angle that you cross people is actually more in line with the direction you're going instead of broadside, which tends to cause more injuries. Traffic signals have a similar effect. We see a reduction in those injury or fatal accidents in the 10 to 40%. Again, it doesn't decrease the amount of crossings, so that's why it's not the exact same, but it is a reduction as well. For the right turn lane removal, the consideration there that we want folks to, and I know from the comments that we've received on Facebook, obviously we do have folks who are turning currently in a right turn lane. It's a dedicated lane for that, and they're now going to be into the through lane. Obviously, it's nice for drivers to be able to know where folks are. If you're in that right turn lane, you are assuming that person's going to turn right, versus other scenarios where potentially someone doesn't turn on their right turn signal, which can be frustrating. But anytime that you see a movement such as this two-way stop control configuration where you have folks needing to judge their gap and to turn, those permissive movements do have that inherent risk. And so that inherent risk is present regardless of if we have dedicated right turn lanes or if it's a conventional intersection. Yes, sir.
So you said that the chance of having accidents is less if there's a roundabout significantly reduced. But the number of near misses at 88th Street crossing is pretty high.
Yeah, so
especially with the blind curve there, and especially during school rush time. It's crazy that people can get hurt.
So there's a comment in the room about roundabouts and near misses. So we do have some crash data we'll be going over in just a few minutes regarding the roundabouts, that one and some of our single lane roundabouts too. So.
Yep. Yeah, so consideration, so discuss the vehicles and safety considerations, now discussing other users of these intersections, so pedestrians. So these are just a couple of the key considerations for the improvements for pedestrians. The roundabout significantly decreases the crossing distance that you'd interact with as a pedestrian. It the roundabout itself slows down people because, again, as Christine alluded to earlier, the changes in geometry, there's more things for people to perceive. They move through roundabouts slower. So it is a dramatic improvement for pedestrians to get through a roundabout. The traffic signal, conventionally, folks have interacted with those a lot. You would have a dedicated pedestrian phase, so you'd push the button on the pole, and you'd wait for your time, and you'd be able to cross. So having that protected phase is obviously an improvement over what's existing today. And then for the right turn removal, we've kind of discussed this with the improvements at Pkwy as well. But while it does decrease that crossing distance, which is great, the town is also considering adding mid-block pedestrian refuges, so extending those medians out. So there's opportunities for folks who are crossing if somebody does, perhaps not see the pedestrian and they're halfway across, that pedestrian has a safe space to remain in the median and then proceed across if that errant vehicle did not see them. And then additionally, the retroreflective rectangular flashing beacons. So those are those flashing beacons that we've been talking about that somebody can press to increase their conspicuousness when crossing. So that's another consideration that we're looking at for the right turn removals as well to help out pedestrians. Then bicyclists, along the same vein, very similar to what we talked about with pedestrians. The roundabout, when we get to the concept, I'll be able to highlight, we are looking at a separate bike lane that's separate from vehicles, separate from pedestrians. It's in line with the newer design standards for roundabouts. It's preferred by bicyclists and vehicle travel. I think a lot of folks have interacted with bicyclists through roundabouts, and what we're looking at here is a completely separated facility for them so that they can traverse safely without impacting the vehicle traffic as well. The traffic signal, one of the considerations that we'd look at there is making sure that the traffic signal has detection for bicyclists. One of the common issues for people riding their bikes when they go through traffic signals is the detection to inform folks that they are there, may not perceive that they're there. There's detection equipment now that allows that. And that keeps bicyclists from, potentially running the red light or not using the intersection as intended. So that's something that we're looking at for bicyclists at a traffic signal. And then the right turn lane, it does not have any dramatic changes to how bicyclists will interact with the intersection. The crossing of the currently today, a vehicle will cross over the bike lane to get into the turn lane. That crossing will just occur at the intersection, which fortunately, that's conventionally where most of us perceive the danger while driving is the intersection, and we do see near misses with folks with those crossings of turn lanes with bicyclists because as drivers, we're not used to having to expect somebody to be in that blind spot when we enter a new lane. So while it's not exactly, the same level of improvement as the other two, it is something that driver expectation could be an improvement. And then emergency evacuation. So we do have an exhibit for this that'll help highlight everything. This is really, I want to just discuss a little bit with obviously the Marshall fires, and that's, front of the mind in this community here. The traffic signal and right turn lane removals don't change the functionality of Rock Creek Parkway. So how it operates is how it's going to continue to operate regardless of that improvement. The roundabout, so we have discussed how that is a single lane roundabout. That's for the traffic and safety improvements. It operates from a traffic perspective well there and great for pedestrians and bicyclists. But obviously the town wanted to make sure we're considering that if there ever were to be another event like that, how would folks be able to interact with this intersection in a meaningful way that still is the same. The exhibit that we're going to provide and that we'll discuss here shortly shows how raised concrete elements at the roundabout we're considering to be 2 inches. Your conventional curb is 6 inches tall. So a 2-inch curb is easily traversed by a vehicle, but it's high enough contrast, it keeps people off of it, still has the safety benefit for folks to get through. So in the event that an emergency vehicle needs to get over that, they are able to do so. Additionally, the travel lanes that are in the roundabout are able to accommodate 2 standard size vehicles at a time. So during any emergency evacuation, there's going to need to be a guidance from some form of emergency official, be that a police officer or someone that's directing traffic to help people merge and get through the intersection. The roundabout would be able to be configured by said person so that 2 vehicles could get through as they do today. So while that's a consideration we want folks to take into account, it does function similarly, and we do have a question.
Quick question. If you can have 2 vehicles in a roundabout for an emergency evacuation, what's the benefit of just having a 1 lane normally? Like, why not just go with 2 lanes?
So the question in the room is about the benefit of a 1-lane roundabout. So we will touch on that on a slide in just a few minutes. So we'll definitely answer that question. There's another question.
I see roundabout value engineered versus roundabouts. Maybe I lost it earlier on. What's the difference between value engineered?
We do have we do have the actual roundabout templates in here, so we'll show you the difference between the standard roundabout and a valued engineered roundabout.
Yep. Yeah, that's actually a perfect segue into talking a little bit about costs. I know the questions come up here. So really this highlights, as discussed, there's going to be reconstruction on Rock Creek Parkway just to rehab that pavement section. The costs that we're looking at here on the screen, these ranges, would be the additional cost to make this improvement on top of the already slated pavement reconstruction. That valued engineered option that we're talking about there is something we'll display here, but basically it's the town was having us take a look at ways that we could save money on the intersection by trading some of the raised concrete elements for striped out elements, which will make some sense when we get to the exhibits here shortly. Does have some marginal changes to the overall safety, but functionally, all different facets, it's going to be the same.
I will note that the right turn lane removal, so we have an asterisk up there. So at Pkwy Avenue, the additional cost for the right turn lane removals, including the landscaping improvements, was about $130,000, so $150,000. So this number is much larger. 1, because we're being conservative. 2, it didn't factor in the costs that we saved not having to reconstruct that section of road. So there is a cost savings of not having to tear out that road and repave it. So after we factored that in on the first Rock Creek project, the Pkwy Avenue was about $130,000, $150,000 to do the right turn lane removals.
With respect to the cost, since you're bringing it up, I mean, obviously, are you looking at this as a complete separate compared to the whole program? Or are you looking at the rest of the program in context of, you just mentioned some of the landscape improvements are pretty elaborate on the previous sections that were done. Is there some trade-off that can be made without having 17 colors of rock and maybe putting some of that money towards doing the right improvements from a traffic perspective instead of just the aesthetic value per se?
So the question in the room was about the cost. If we look at measures to reduce costs like the landscaping improvements and factoring those in, and the answer is yes. So when we did Rock Creek Parkway, we actually looked at several different landscape designs to try to minimize costs. We are going away from heavy water use landscaping, so we're going to more xeriscaping. It does have a little bit higher upfront costs, but it's longer. Long-term cost is lower, and also the water commodity in Colorado is scarce, so it helps us save that water commodity. But the short answer is yes. So we look at costs in all of those aspects. And actually, the first phase of Rock Creek Parkway, we actually came in under the bid amount. We were able to do some cost savings during construction that reduced those costs too. So that's something we're always looking at.
So now we're going to take a look at these different alternatives as we've had them rendered. I will note that we do have blown up versions here up in the front that during the question period, you're welcome to come up and take a look at them more closely. Additionally, after the survey, we'll be around to take a look at these closely as well. So if you're not able to see as well as you'd like, just know that we'll be able to take a closer look with y'all later on in the presentation. So the single lane roundabout is what we have here displayed. Reason being for the single lane roundabout, so the traffic impact studies that were done out here, as we've alluded to, the single lane roundabout functions as an improvement to the overall level of service to the intersection, while having the added benefit to the pedestrians, the bicyclists, having less lanes for them to traverse, having less conflict points between extra vehicles and those different users of the intersection are all great benefits to the single lane roundabout while still making a meaningful traffic improvement. The other things to consider here, obviously, as we've discussed, we're truncating the crossing distances, and then I did say I would mention for the bicyclists, we do have those separated bicycle lanes. I can highlight those a little bit closer for those who have individual questions, but we do have, it's a separate lane that comes off to the side. Yeah, thank you, Brandon. that Brandon's highlighting there with the cursor. So you would be able to, as the bicyclist, have your separate facility cross where the pedestrians cross, but then stay on pavement, not conflict with the pedestrian or the vehicle.
So I'm going to skip ahead. So there's been a lot of questions about why we're doing a one-lane roundabout, so I'm going to go ahead and cover that. So why one lane? There's several reasons. One is the footprint size. So we do have a large footprint in Rock Creek Parkway. The two-lane roundabout at 88th and down here at McCaslin Marshall, it takes up about 200 feet of right-of-way. So right now we have 100 foot from curb to curb, roughly. So we could get away with probably about 160 or 175 feet, but we're going to have to expand that roadway and get closer to those homes that are there to do a two-lane roundabout. So we'd have to widen the road. It would also increase costs significantly when we start moving those curb lines and widening the road. The second thing is traffic volumes. So a single-lane roundabout is designed, it can handle up to 20,000 vehicles per day. At this intersection, my third bullet under traffic volumes, we have about 6,500 cars today going through that intersection. Even our most conservative projections in 2035, which assumes a growth rate of about 2 or 3% per year, and as we know, our area is pretty much built out. We're not going to be adding more homes in Rock Creek anytime soon. So even using a 3% growth factor, we're up to 11,000 vehicles per day in 2035. So that's another reason. And for reference, the McCaslin Boulevard and Colton Road intersection, it's over there, off of Colton Road. When you come into McCaslin, it's a one-lane roundabout. That averages 13,000 vehicles per day, and that's a single-lane roundabout. So for perspective, that roundabout does double the traffic that Rock Creek Parkway and Cold Creek Drive see as a single-lane roundabout. And I drive that roundabout at least twice every day coming in to and from work, and I've never had a delay at that intersection. Also safety. So single-lane roundabouts are safer. Studies show that people fail to yield to pedestrians 2 to 3 times more often in a two-lane roundabout. And also in town, we've looked at accident data. So I touched on Colton and McCaslin. We have had, over the last 5 years, we've had 3 accidents at the McCaslin Boulevard, Colton Road intersection with 13,000 cars. For comparisons, Rock Creek Parkway at 88th Street has about 12,000 cars a day, because we get a lot more traffic on the eastern side of Rock Creek Parkway than we do the western side when the 88th comes in. At that intersection, we've had more than twice as many accidents over the last 5 years. So we've had 8 accidents at Rock Creek Parkway and 88th Street with fewer cars than at the Rock Creek, or than at Colton and McCaslin. So,
Question on that. Is that a vehicle collision, or are we talking about pedestrian?
So we did have, we'll go over, so the question was if it's just vehicle accidents. So that lumps in all accidents. We did have there's been 2 bicycle accidents at Rock Creek and 88th Street where bicyclists were in the roadway. We haven't had any pedestrian accidents in the time period we looked at any of these intersections.
How many accidents at Cold Creek and Rock Creek?
We have that data. It was pretty low, at 5, maybe 4 over that time period. But the question's the accident data at Rock Creek Parkway and Cold Creek Drive. I think we have it in a slide, but I want to say it was about 4 or 5 over that same time period. So I just want to touch on why we were looking at a single lane roundabout, because I know there's been some questions about that.
Are we allowed to ask questions on what this design looks like? Is that the time or not? You want to do it later?
Yeah, if you could come to the podium though, so the folks on Zoom can hear you.
No, simple question on the bike lane coming through there. So is that going to be raised so they have to stay to follow along at the crossing, or can they cut that corner when people are trying to make right turns off of there? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, so if I'm understanding correctly, so we're looking at the bicycle lane, yes. And so conventionally with that striping there, what we're looking at is we're trying to be cost effective and save on some of that raised median there. Could a bicyclist go ahead and come through there? That's what that little splitter island, that other piece of orange that we're looking at there, prevents somebody from doing, is coming straight across. Do they need to stay into that striping? Obviously, it's not raised, so they could. But if that's a consideration that folks are concerned about, obviously, we'd like to hear about that in the survey.
And I would say, in terms of design purposes, this is conceptual at best. So we've not entered any design details. We have collected survey data, but we haven't started doing detailed designs on any plan because we don't know what we're doing yet. We don't know if we're doing right turn lane removals, traffic signal, or roundabout. That's the purpose of this meeting tonight, and we will be talking about this at March 10th. So we haven't done the detailed design elements for this yet. Yes, ma'am. If you could go to the podium, please.
I'm wondering on this design where you've got this large orange thing, I assume that's like a raised kind of island or something. Why wouldn't you, instead of going all the way down to one lane, why wouldn't you have a dedicated right-hand turn lane that would just go that way and that way? It would basically make it like a two-lane thing, but it doesn't seem like it would take up a lot more room.
I think in short, we just don't have the volume of traffic to warrant that additional right turn lane, kind of a free flow right turn lane.
Well, there's not a lot of bike traffic there.
Yeah. So,
Kids. We don't want our kids to take the way.
okay. We'll keep, and we'll definitely open up for public comment. So at the end of this meeting, we'll open up to public comment. You can share your specific feedback, your concerns, your questions, and also answer any questions that you all have.
Yes. Yep, and we'll have all these too, so we can look at them a little bit closer up in the front as well. So as I alluded to earlier in the presentation, talking about the evacuation plan and just the considerations that we've made for the roundabout itself. This is a little bit difficult to see on the screen just with the colors. So again, I have this one printed out. We can look at it a little bit closer with folks, but you can see the red and green lines. Those are outlines for a standard vehicle, fairly conservative. Obviously, we're not trying to make sure people are doing these like NASCAR drivers. These are not precision moves, movements that conventional drivers can make. And so you can see going east and west, we do have tandem driving, the tandem driving ability. We have a profile of that 2-inch curb that I've discussed with folks, so that allows for emergency vehicles to traverse on top, or if there was a need for somebody to drive on that in an emergency situation with their conventional vehicle, they'd be able to do so. And then last but not least, one of the other considerations we have are these collapsible signs. You're probably familiar with them closer up into the mountains. They fold in half, and they usually say like chain laws in effect or something to that. That's something that we could consider putting out there that would assist emergency responders who are helping direct traffic to inform vehicles that you can form 2 lanes and utilize the medians, and also making sure that folks are taking their turns merging. That is the number one breakdown during emergency evacuations, is obviously people letting each other in and merging. We do quite a few roundabout designs across the country, and we've done this similar design with roundabouts on the people who are in the hurricane paths. Obviously, they deal with frequent evacuations there. So this is a very similar treatment that we've seen be successfully implemented in places like Florida. And then I won't talk too long on this one here, but this is just the value engineered concept. Again, we're just looking at trading different things of less raised concrete areas for more striped areas that would help save some costs. But again, we would work with the town to develop these concepts further if this was what would be selected. This exhibit that we're looking at here is the dedicated right turn lanes. So this are the removing of the dedicated right turn lanes. So the kind of orange space there is raised concrete, or we'll show you kind of what was done at Pkwy and the different considerations for landscaping that would be done there. But what we are doing is obviously truncating the crossing distance. We do have pedestrian refuges along those medians, and then those RRFBs, those flashing beacons that folks are able to press the button and increase their conspicuousness to drivers during the crossing.
You would put that on both sides?
Yes. So the question in the room is, would we be putting that on both sides? So yes, it would be on both sides of for people that are crossing Rock Creek. And there would also be a sign and a button in the middle. These would be timed so that somebody would be able to cross the entirety of the intersection. It would not be timed to only make it halfway. But if there was an event where somebody, was tagging along and didn't quite make it across because somebody had pressed it before them, they would have a button in the middle there for them to press so that they could continue across.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are those, would there be lighted warning things on the north and south
Is that also not just across Whole Creek?
So the question in the room was, would we do RRFBs on the north and south side of the intersection, on the Coal Creek Drive side of the intersection? And no, we wouldn't. When you have a stop control, you generally don't need RRFBs, which stand for rapid flashing beacon. I forget the first word, but basically flashing beacon. Those are really when you have uncontrolled movements. So where you have free flow traffic is where we install those. So we did put them in at Pkwy. If you're familiar with that intersection, there's 6 of them there. You push one, they all 6 go off. That's how they're designed. So it draws a lot of attention to the pedestrians. Oh, perfect. This is an image of Pkwy Avenue actually taken last week by Christine. So you can see you have the 6 RFBs, the 2 in the median. You have a small island there in the median for crossings. And you can push any of the buttons and they'll all go off.
We've already eliminated the right turn lane coming off of Rock Creek onto Coal Creek. So what's the difference?
So the question is, we've already eliminated the right turn lane on Rock Creek. So really the difference is we're getting rid of the asphalt, and we understand those flex posts aren't ideal. I drive it. I don't like looking at them either. They are distracting. So it's also pavement that we still have to maintain until it is removed. So in this picture on the screen here, this is at Pkwy before you get to the intersection where we remove the right turn lanes. So the goal of removing the right turn lanes is it takes away that asphalt we have to maintain. It also gets rid of the option of people getting in the right turn lane and then coming in contact with the flex post and then having to get out of it. And it just reduces that long-term maintenance cost, and it makes it a cleaner intersection look. So if we were building the whole Rock Creek last year, we would have not put flex post in. We would have moved the curb line at that time, but we just didn't reconstruct the road, so it didn't make sense to do those curb line movements last year. That's why we did the flex post, but they are meant to be temporary. This project would get rid of those right turn lanes physically. Yes, sir, another question.
Does removing the turn lanes, does that move the stop line forward? Pull up across?
The question is, if we remove the right turn lanes, does it remove the stop line? I don't think we're, go ahead.
Yeah, so this we are changing the curb line, and we talked a little bit earlier about what a bulb out is. And so this is in line with that, where we are pulling the radius of that curb return out further. So the stop position is nominally the same. That space is still given to the pedestrian. But with the pulling of that curb line out on the southwest side and the northeast side, we would see obviously some changes in the speed. People would have to take that corner a little bit slower just with the tighter geometry. Yes, ma'am.
So does the landing zone reduce the amount of room to turn to make the left turn moving onto Rock Creek Parkway?
The question in the room is, if we add the landing zone for pedestrians, does it reduce the left turn lane? There might be some minor lane adjustments to create that width, but it'd be pretty minimal. At Pkwy, it was taking inches from each lane to add that, because we already have about a 2-foot buffer, and I think we needed a 3-foot buffer to give a safe pedestrian crossing.
And that doesn't move it further into the intersection, the island. So right now, when you make that left turn, does it make the left turn sharper so you have to go across both lanes?
Okay, yeah, so the question is, will it make, we will have to extend the concrete out to add that pedestrian refugee. So yes, refuge. It will make that left turn so you have to come out more into the intersection, which is a good thing when you look at slowing speeds and that aspect of it.
This means you need both lanes clear to make the left turn onto Rock Creek Parkway. You have to wait longer. That's because.
So this is just a schematic. So I encourage you to drive Pkwy Avenue in Rock Creek where we've done this, and that gives you a better perspective of what it would look like. We do want those comments, but it would look just like we have it at the Pkwy and Rock Creek Parkway intersection. And we've got a lot of complaints about the flex post, and I understand it. I get it. Christine and I have not gotten one complaint about Rock Creek Parkway and South Pkwy Avenue since we completed the improvements last year. That intersection seems to work really well, and I think it's just having the aesthetics of the right turn lane removed and this enhanced crossing. But don't get too stuck on that orange drawing up there. This is just a schematic. This is 0% design. This is just a view only. Yes, ma'am, up front.
Well, this is sort of like what we have now with those flex posts, so I would be interested in whether people that ride their bikes or walk with their kids across there think that this is safer. No. It's cheap.
Yeah, so the question in the room is, does it feel safer for pedestrians? Obviously, we have a lot of people in the room. We have people online. We do want to hear these comments. So if you have specific feedback, please share. We will open it up to public comment at the end.
Okay, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the traffic signal. I'm going to pass it back to Christine.
So back in about 2018 and 2019, we actually did look at putting in a traffic signal at this intersection and looked at what that would, what that design would look like. And would look pretty typical to your standard traffic signal, 4 poles, and it would just be a standard signalized intersection. So that's what we're showing here. So as Brandon mentioned, and he actually went over one of these, we looked at, we've read all of the Facebook comments, and I just kind of tried to gather some of the common sentiments, some of the common questions that I saw, and from feedback that we received on over emails, and just put some commonly asked questions together. So Brandon already talked about why the 1 lane for the roundabout. This is the why eliminate the right turn lanes. We've talked about this a lot, but the biggest one is cutting that 12 feet of crossing distance, reducing that 1 lane, cuts it by about 15% for pedestrians or bikes crossing the road. And it also brings us into the standards for the public right-of-way accessibility guidelines. Right now, our road is too wide and the time it takes a pedestrian to cross is too long. The traffic volumes do not warrant the right turn lanes. So as Tyler was talking about earlier, we don't, it operates at a level of service A. We're only going to be delayed 0 to 6 seconds. Whether or not there's a turn lane, a dedicated right turn lane there or not. And the flex posts will not remain, as Brandon was talking about earlier. We will be moving the curb and gutter to look similar to that Rock Creek Parkway and Pkwy intersection. Yes, sir.
Those flex posts, you said they're temporary. Can we remove them? I mean, they're a hazard right now. I mean, especially like Coal Ridge coming off Rock Creek. I mean, you're hitting your brakes and making a 90-degree turn, and people are flying behind you, and so it's more of a hazard having those flex posts. And I don't know if you've gotten a lot of complaints about that, but my neighborhood is up in arms because of those.
I just went out there today. There's 21 posts out there, and all but 3 of those posts have been hit. 2 of those posts are off their mounting right now.
But no, so I get that, but can they be removed?
I mean, they're dangerous. Right?
They are absolutely dangerous. And you're creating more of a problem with those flex posts. And I mean, there was not I don't see it. I go into that neighborhood every day. I live in that neighborhood.
So the question's on the flex post. So the reason we put the flex posts and took the right turn lanes away is that second bullet there. So these crossings aren't in compliance with the public right-of-way accessibility guidelines. So it's a dangerous situation for pedestrians. Like they're not in compliant with current safety standards. So it does sound like reducing the intersection width by 15% may not seem like a lot, but just doing that brings these intersections into compliance for pedestrian safety crossing. So I hear your concerns regarding the flex posts. We can look at possibly removing a few to make some of the turns less strict. But at the same time, we've also had no accidents at any intersection where flex posts were installed. I know it's only been 6 to 8 months, but we've not had any accidents since then. We can look at accidents prior. But the main reason we removed them is for pedestrian crossing safety, to get them in compliance with that minimum cross or the maximum crossing length. So basically, if you have a crossing more than 90 feet on a 35-mile-per-hour road, it's not considered safe for accessibility guidelines. It doesn't meet any current standard, and that's why we reduced it. By taking those right turn lanes away, we've reduced it to 84 feet, which does meet the maximum distance that can be for a safe pedestrian crossing.
I ask that you look at them again, because they're really dangerous.
Yes, sir, one more question?
Well,
Your comment is the point of the flex posts though, right? Is that you do have to slow down in order to make the turn, which creates a safer intersection. And the issue is that everyone is going so fast on that road to begin with that it feels like you're slowing down so much, because slowing down from 50 miles an hour to be able to make a sharp right turn feels like a lot. So that's where I think having another roundabout where there are opportunities to slow down traffic along that road will make those flex post intersections that turn into a no right lane intersection safer, because traffic will naturally be going slower.
What about all the merging that's gonna have to happen to the roundabout?
I really appreciate all the comments.
This is our last slide.
Yeah, we want people to speak into the microphone so that everybody on Zoom can hear, and when people are watching the recordings too. So I appreciate the conversations and stuff, and we do want the feedback, but we want it into that microphone.
Yeah, this is our last slide. Then we'll open it up to public comment and questions.
So one of the common questions I saw was how will this be paid for? So we've touched on this, the 2024 sales and use tax ballot measure that passed last year. And then when will a decision be made? Brandon mentioned we do plan to take the staff recommendations and present all of the feedback that we receive here tonight to Town Council on March 10th, and we'll get direction on where to, on the design to move forward for this at that March 10th council.
So that's it. So we'll open it up to public comment and questions. If you could just raise your hand and actually come up to the podium and speak so they can hear you on Zoom, if you don't mind. You're first.
Just gonna talk a bit. Just wanted to see if you can mention the environmental, impacts of the different options as well. I understand that roundabouts have a certain benefit over traffic lights and stop signs. Certainly, I don't know the impact of the removing the turn lane and such, but I feel it's similar. I mean, you actually have to almost come to a complete stop to make that sharp 90-degree. So roundabouts, I feel are by far the benefit in terms of the safety as well as environmental impact.
Thank you.
And I will add, if you want to speak on Zoom, if you could just raise your hand and we'll unmute you. But we have a lot in the room too, so we'll try to get these first. Yes, ma'am.
Is that intersection too far away from Superior Elementary to consider moving the school zone to include that intersection and slow down traffic during the highest volume times so that kids can cross with slower traffic and cars can make left turns with slower traffic?
That's a great question. So when we redid Rock Creek last year, we actually did move the school zones. Alex Bullen is our program manager for transportation. Alex, can you remind me which way? I think we removed the ones that were west of Indiana, didn't we? So we did move those back. So there's very set guidelines on how far to space things based on speeds. The only drawback to moving them further back is if you make the school zone too far, people don't respect the school zone speeds, is what studies have shown. So I did hear that comment at the January meeting, and that is something we looked at. That would be the one hesitation, because people tend to get frustrated with going so slow for so long, and they'll just start ignoring it where they don't feel like it applies to them personally. But that's definitely something we could look at.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead. Thank you for raising your hands, but feel free to step up and comment.
So if we turn this into a roundabout here, it'll be a one lane coming in and out. Does that mean that this will be one lane all the way up to Indiana?
No.
And then back down to, where does the merge go from 2 lanes in Indiana?
Can't hear you.
Where does the merge go from 2 lanes on Rock Creek Parkway to get to the roundabout?
Yeah, so you can, again, this is very conceptual. You can see on the westward traffic where it merges back into 2 lanes. We would look at, so if we took it down to a 1-lane roundabout, we would have to look at the distance between here and 88th. It may not be wide enough or long enough to make it back to 2 lanes. At the same time, there's no intersections between Coal Creek Drive and 88th. So you're not adding any more cars. So we may, if the roundabout is what is ultimately decided, we may maintain the one lane between Coal Creek Drive and 88th, and then open it back up to a 2-lane roundabout at 88th. And we do have a sketch of the 88th roundabout we'll show you at the very end. But basically, it would go back to 2 lanes as soon as you leave the roundabout heading west. It may stay 1 lane between Coal Creek Drive and 88th, depending on how much distance we have to bring you back to 2 lanes. But then it would open up to 2 lanes when you got to the 88th roundabout. And I think we have that image here.
So from Indiana, south or east, it goes from 2 lanes there just down to 1. Where?
So as you leave Indiana and you approach the roundabout, you would go down to 1 lane. As you approach the roundabout, it would put traffic back into 1 lane at the
Certainly slow
roundabout.
things down.
Yes, yeah, it would slow things down. I mean,
Thank you.
yeah. And I brought this image up of the 88th roundabout. I don't want to get too focused on this. 88th roundabout would remain a 2-lane roundabout. 88th roundabout's kind of weird. It's kind of like a hybrid 1-lane, 2-lane roundabout. So it's not your typical 2-lane roundabout design we would do today. But we would look to make modifications to it to improve the safety of that roundabout, because we have more accidents at that roundabout than other roundabouts in town, probably because it's an older design. And I say that we don't have a lot of accidents. 8 over 5 years is really relatively low. Our community is lucky. We have very few accidents in town, which I'm very grateful for. But we would still open it up to 2 lanes at 88th, as you can see here. So it comes back to 2 lanes at 88th, and it's 2 lanes approaching 88th and leaving 88th to the east. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Paul. I have lived in Rock Creek for about 12 and a half years, and I live off Weldona. So one of the first things that happened when I moved here was traffic was changed dramatically for me. And it's felt to me, well, I'm concerned this feels a little bit like a continuation of driving in my neighborhood being more and more oppressive and difficult to navigate. And that sometimes I have trouble making sense of it. My question, after making that point, although I am very concerned about the ability of bikes, of students, of pedestrians to cross, I think it's important to do that. My question is, this crosswalk has been there for quite a while. Has something changed that has made this become an issue that's imperative to fix now? And was there any kind of study done to try to determine if there are other ways to address that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, nothing's changed in the corridor since it was really built. Obviously, the demographics in our community changed in terms of number of kids going to school. The one thing that has changed in the area is the Weldona connection to 88th was closed. I don't have the exact date for that. I think it was 2019, 2020. So when that was closed, that did impact the traffic on Coal Creek Drive. So we now have more cars coming up Coal Creek Drive to Rock Creek Parkway. So that's probably the one thing that has.
I think it was 2014.
Oh, Weldona. Okay.
I was only here a few years.
Sorry, yeah. Yeah, I don't know when Weldona was changed, but it did change, and that created more traffic at Coal Creek Drive. We also add the lanterns at the bottom, or at the north end of Coal Creek Drive. So the traffic volumes on Coal Creek Drive have increased with development and that Weldona closure, so that's probably the one thing that has changed. And anytime you add more cars or pedestrians, you add more conflict points. I feel very fortunate. We've had some pedestrians hit in town at different intersections. We've not had any pedestrian fatalities in the last 10, 12, 15 years. So very grateful for that. And of course, we don't want one. I mean, that would be the worst case scenario. In terms of other measures we've looked at, we did, with the Rock Creek repurposing study in 2023, we looked at a lot of different options. The best option in terms of reducing speeds and improving safety was to take it down to one lane. The community was not interested in that approach for the large part, and so the council ultimately decided to take it to narrow the lanes to try to reduce speeds. And we did take away the right turn lanes to bring them in compliance with those crossing standards. Christine touched on options to reduce speeds. I mean, there's a lot of options in our tool belt. But Rock Creek Parkway is difficult. We don't want to do a raised intersection at 35 miles per hour because it's just too fast. People will bottom out, damage cars, and raised crosswalks just aren't an option for this road and the way it's designed. So, yeah, I think.
Okay.
And just to touch on why now, so the reason we did the 2023 traffic study is because we were looking at reconstructing the road. So that's kind of why there's this push to do a change now, because this is when it makes sense to do it, when we're ripping up the road anyway. So if we're going to put in a traffic circle or, take away lanes or whatever we're doing, it just makes sense to create it as the same project.
My name is Chris. I live off of Amherst. So I had a couple questions, really just kind of want to confirm what I hear. So it sounded like from the information you provided on the different options, roundabouts would present the safest option. Is that accurate?
In terms of just pure safety, it would be roundabouts and traffic signals would be the two safest options.
But it looked like the data was saying roundabouts had a higher level of safety.
So roundabouts reduce the chances of they reduce bad accidents, injury accidents, fatal accidents, because they slow speeds down. Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't say you have less accidents at a roundabout versus a traffic signal. It's just the severity of the accidents goes significantly down with the roundabout.
Okay, so overall safety you would say is the same, but severity of accidents is worse with the traffic signals.
That's correct.
Okay. And then regarding the single lane, so I think I heard you guys mention the roundabout on McCaslin and Colton as kind of a reference of a single lane. Now, I'm just trying to think, are those roads single lane going into the roundabout?
So McCaslin is, Colton is not. Colton's a 2-lane road that narrows to 1 lane out the roundabout. So that's similar to what we would see here.
Okay, so you have Colton as a 2-lane, but then McCaslin as a single lane.
Correct.
Okay, whereas what we're talking about here is a two-lane, okay.
It's 3 lanes.
So is that, I guess what I'm getting at, is that a similar comparison for what we're talking about here for the roundabout? Like, cause that's, I'm just trying to get a sense, is that like a reasonable reference for us to think about?
I would say yes. I mean, here Colton is 2 lanes and you have them merge down into a single lane as you approach the roundabout. So that's how Rock Creek Parkway would function.
And that one's busier?
This intersection has about 13,000 vehicles per day. We actually just did traffic counts in 2024 this year as part of last year as part of our transportation plan. We have about 13,000 cars at this intersection, about 6,500 cars at the Coal Creek Drive, Rock Creek Parkway intersection.
Okay, so with this model that's already in existence, going from a double to the single roundabout, you have twice as much traffic as what we're seeing on the
correct
Rock Creek and
Coal Creek Drive.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thanks.
I had the accident data up. I think we've had 3 accidents in this in the last 5 years, where we've had 8 at 88th. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so, I mean, you're taking questions and comment, I'm assuming. You said comments as well, so I'll give some comments here. I mean, I think biggest issues we're trying to solve here, in my opinion, are speed on Rock Creek Parkway, number 1, or maybe number 2, and safety for pedestrians and bicyclists. Okay, I think pedestrians are probably more pedestrians I see than bicyclists. If I look at that, you keep alluding to this 1 lane. I think clearly McCaslin has twice as much traffic as Rock Creek Parkway in this intersection in general. So it may not be popular for many people, but I think the objection from my perspective of 1 lane before was not having any sort of access to get on or off of Rock Creek Parkway with only 1 lane. If all the intersections were traffic circles or other ways to get movements onto Rock Creek Parkway from the neighborhood, then yeah, if 1 lane is slowing it down, I don't see a problem with 1 lane slowing it down. The issue is if you have to make a left turn onto a 1 lane road that's not controlled with a traffic circle or some other way, then that's a problem, right? It's getting onto and off and getting in and out of our neighborhoods that becomes the problem. If you've solved that problem looking at Rock Creek Parkway as a whole, I don't see a problem with 1 lane because clearly it's going to slow things down. Okay. Don't know how other people feel about that. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not polling per se. I'm just saying, you know, the issue we have with speed is you want to have a lot of people. Why does it slow it down? Why did this traffic slow down on Via Appia's? Because you're as slow as the slowest car, right? So people can't go by you at 45 or 50 miles an hour if there's only 1 lane. Okay. Second one goes back to, I don't know whether we've ever considered, we have these flashing beacons, right? And you push the button and they've become like yellow lights. Cars speed up now. It's not that they see them and slow down. You what? I'm sorry?
Oh, go ahead, sir, go ahead.
No, I've seen it. I've seen the cars, they try to beat you across the intersection. Okay, I've taken many videos on my phone as I see this happening, all right? So you look at it and say, hey, has anyone in the US looked at what they do other places in Europe where there's basically, it turns into a red light, you push the button and it's a red light, it beeps, and obviously you want the shorter traffic so you're not slowing it down, but I don't know whether they've done that in the US at all or not. But if you go to Europe or you go to England, you push that little button, it
There's one on 88.
So, so basically, in the U.S. design standards, if we were going to do we changed it to a stoplight. So we're actually looking, they're called a hawk signal, but basically you get a red flashing light, which means stop when you see a pedestrian, and then you can go, and they're pedestrian actuated. The town is looking at putting one of those in, possibly McCaslin through a grant we got. There's some in Louisville and Lafayette at those crossings. South Boulder Road has some, but those are considered, they operate more like traffic signals than the rapid flashing beacons.
Right, and obviously with your shrinking of the road sizes, they don't have to be 45, 75 seconds or whatever, right? They can be significantly, well, they can be shorter in time so that they're not as much of an impact, right? It just seems that that's one. And then I don't know whether speed stuff people are looking at, is there consideration for slowing down the speed limit on Rock Creek Parkway? Maybe people hate that idea and get yelled at by some of these gentlemen over here.
So,
I don't know,
yeah,
but
that's a good question. So changing speed limits does not change speeds. So we have a perfect example in Rock Creek, actually. Rock Creek Circle used to be 35 miles per hour. It was reduced to 30 miles per hour, and then it was ultimately reduced to 25 miles per hour. And what we found is cars are still doing the same speed that they were when the speed limit was 30 miles per hour, even though it's been reduced to 25. So what happens is drivers go the speed they feel comfortable going, within reason of a speed limit. But in Rock Creek Circle, when we reduced it from 30 to 25, it had no change to what actual speeds people were doing.
Of course, it wouldn't, because people had to go. Which gets to an interesting poll I'll have to do on the Superior page about when do you look at speed cameras?
So speed cameras is something that the Transportation Safety Committee has asked us to look at. Alex is actually leading that effort. So we are looking into speed and red light cameras in town. We'll actually be talking about that at the Transportation Safety Committee meeting at the end of March.
Okay, I mean, I generally in the past have always hated them, but it's 45 miles an hour down Rock Creek Parkway. It doesn't matter. You can, it's nuts right now, so.
Yeah.
Well, okay, well, I've lived here for 25 years or more, so that's right. That's fine. The only other comment I'll say with respect to like the speed zone sizes, I think your commentary about people don't think it applies to them is, I think people aren't sure you've come out of the speed zone, right? When you go through the lights, if there's not another sign reminding people at the speed zone as it gets longer and longer, basically people don't know, oh, is the speed zone over or not? It's just like when you have construction traffic, people don't know. So it's not an issue of necessarily they don't want to follow it. It's that they don't know if they're still in it. I think 88th is a classic example where 88th all the way down by Dillon Road, right? It starts off there and it goes on forever and no one knows they're still in it before it ends. All right, and the last comment was, don't change the 88th roundabout. It works fine. Your proposal, I'll tell you later, it just doesn't make sense. You're going to create conflict of people getting onto South Rock Creek Parkway from 88th versus those coming down Rock Creek Parkway to begin with. Tell you later.
So we do want to hear from everyone. We're going to do one more public comment, and then I know some folks are probably going to begin to leave. We're going to do the survey, which will take less than 5 minutes, and then we will go back to public comment. So after this public comment, we're going to take a short break. We're going to do our survey. It takes less than 5 minutes, and then we'll go back to public comment. So please bear with me. Yes, sir.
So I think I heard that the cross intersections have no more and maybe fewer accidents than the roundabouts, but the roundabouts have less severe accidents. Is that what I heard?
I wouldn't say that. No, I wouldn't say that's true. We actually evaluate, at our March TSC meeting, we actually evaluate all accident data in town, and we look at accidents at every intersection. So accidents vary a lot based on the intersection, the traffic volumes. I just gave that example of 88th compared to McCaslin and Colton. So I wouldn't say we have less accidents at non-roundabout intersections. I'd have to pull the data just to compare for.
How does Pitkin compare from an accident standpoint?
I can't speak off the top of my head. I'd have to pull the data. But if you take my card, I can definitely pull that information. And again, At the TSC meeting, we look at all the traffic data and we do a 5-year look back at accident data in town at all intersections.
Okay. And so I think I heard that the cheapest option that meets current design guidelines is eliminating the right turns.
That's correct.
So that's the cheapest compliant solution.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Thanks.
Okay, Tyler, if you can help me show the survey results. We're going to move to this survey. There's a QR code to scan here. Feel free to get up to scan it. If you don't have a phone, we do have hard copies of the QR code, and I hope the folks on Zoom have it too. We prefer you to do it on your phone or mobile device. That way we can capture the data live. If you don't have it, no worries. You can do a paper copy and we'll manually input it later. These are anonymous surveys. I think it'll ask you for your name, but you don't have to put it. You can put A, B, C, D, whatever number you want to. But really, we'd like to get the feedback from the group. And we are going to go back to public comments. So please, I want to make sure everyone's heard here today. So I'm going to give another minute to scan this QR code. I see some folks' hands raised on Zoom. It's probably for public comment. If you can't access the QR code, give me a chat notice real quick. And as a resident, I'm going to do the survey too.
The option for do nothing, a non-vote,
Can we show the live? Can you pull it up so we can see the live results?
what we've discussed.
Actually, go back to the QR code, sorry. Please don't start the survey yet, because what we'll do is we'll throw the results. It's okay if you have.
It's okay.
It's okay. We're going to throw the results on the screen, so go ahead and do it, but you'll be able to see what people in the room are thinking. Someone online said they can't do the QR code. There is a link. So if for the folks online, we will have a survey posted on our website. If you can't scan the QR code, there will be a survey on our website that's going to be live until the end of the month and probably into early March. So you can still do it later.
Will it be shared publicly?
Yes, so you'll see the survey results as we go here today. But yes, when we meet with council, we'll show the survey results, so they'll be part of our council meeting, and we'll post those on our website so you can access them.
QR code to share with our neighbors?
No, we have a paper copy, but we're going to do a SurveyMonkey survey online. So it'll be a different survey. It'll be the same questions.
Will it be attached to the slides from the slide?
We will have the presentation and the SurveyMonkey at the same site, so you can access both.
And there's a link on the right below that QR code to the SurveyMonkey one. So if you're sharing it later, it's there. Yeah.
Okay, so the first question is, what modes of transportation you use at this intersection? So we got a lot of vehicles and a lot of pedestrians. I'm going to skip to the next question. How often do you use alternative routes to avoid this intersection? I'll let you drive.
Yeah.
We can go to the next question. So we're going to take a second here. Rank your priorities or your top safety concerns. All right, we'll go to the fourth question. No surprise that the left turn movement is the most difficult. All right, I think we're on to our fifth question here. How safe do you feel when navigating the intersection currently? Biking and walking? Just give it a second. Okay. I think the next one is a write-in answer, and you can write in multiple answers to this, what challenges you have navigating the current intersection. And if you're doing a paper copy, please leave it when you leave, and we'll log those in. And again, there will be a SurveyMonkey online for everyone that would like to do the survey at home, or others in their family would like to do it. So let's see here. Oh, that's good. Go ahead. Yes, we have tons of paper in there. Up front. I'm knocking everything down. I think I hit 4 things there.
Oh, excellent.
There's pen. We have pens up front too. All right. And then the last question, it shows you images, but at the end it asks you which option you prefer.
It was an honest response. Agree or not, it was.
Can you see the data before the meeting? Did you look at the data before the meeting? Okay, I was curious. And I think this is our last question. It's which of the 3 intersection alternatives do you prefer?
Because I never had a problem turning left out there.
Yeah. Until the
switched off.
Yeah.
Now I don't know who's turning.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you all for doing this survey. We're not adjourning the public meeting, so we do want to give everyone a chance to speak and be respectful of everyone's comments. So this survey is just to get data from the room. So we're going to share this with council. We do have a Survey Monkey that'll be live later. So I'm going to go back to public comment at this time. And I do see several hands raised online. We will get to you, I promise. Okay. If you're in the room, if you could, just let's be respectful of the next person that's going to speak. Yes, sir.
Hey, thanks for the great presentation. Really appreciate you taking the time to explain everything to us and take everyone's comments. It was not the popular option. I was in favor of the traffic lights as a cyclist with both myself and young kids. The major challenge for bicyclists with the flashing lights is we have no way to access them without going up on the curb, in which case we're jeopardizing pedestrians. So if we do some option that has some sort of flashing lights, if we can make sure that we're considering bicycle safety and make sure that they have equal access to them, that would be fantastic. Thanks.
Thank you.
I just wanted to speak in favor of the kind of full roundabout option, leaning into that opportunity. You know, I think what makes Rock Creek a really wonderful, amazing community is the accessibility and availability for families, and the fact that we have walking paths. It's very well put together to get from point A to point B, and I think that intersection currently is problematic. I know that there are people, particularly when walking to school, who will walk along East River Bend to avoid that intersection, which just puts more kids and parents on less regulated streets that they can get up to the Indiana intersection. And specifically looking at the picture on the south side of that intersection, there are specific pedestrian paths that are very wonderful to walk on, and I think there needs to be better facilitation for children to get to the paths where they should be walking in order to get to and from school. I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, so obviously that's particularly important to me is their safety, and I think that should be relatively universal across the community versus a concern being a reduction in speed getting from point A to point B, because I don't think that's really the purpose for our community. The roundabout improves safety, it reduces speed. I think it would effectively reduce speed further along Rock Creek Parkway than just at that intersection. I have driven through that intersection many, many times, as well as the McCaslin and Colton intersection, the roundabout there that you referenced, where it's one way on McCaslin and then the reduction from 2 lanes down to 1 lane from Colton. And I'm candidly shocked at how well that roundabout works. Cars have to merge, you have to slow down, but you only wait as long as you need to wait. There's no unnecessary wait time. So yes, you do wait sometimes when you're merging onto McCaslin, if it's a particularly busy time of the afternoon, but that's kind of rush hour for you. And so, that should be expected. I think that the reduction in the distance to cross is very meaningful, particularly for small legs and for younger children. They have more opportunities to just, go whatever it would be, 15 feet across a lane versus having to walk the 100 feet that you mentioned right now. I've been walking through that intersection multiple times where you push the light and I'm walking with children through half of it and the other cars don't know if they are supposed to stop. So the other lane is still fully driving through. And so we get up to the median and we're kind of stranded there because the cars are still driving through, and it's poor solution in my mind because it doesn't really address the safety of people walking across. So I really like the reduction in the distance to cross. The additional safety for bicyclists, I think, is very relevant there as well, with their own lane so that they're able to go through and avoid traffic while also having some distance from pedestrians as well. And I think the last thing that I would mention is just the benefits of roundabouts, in that you essentially wait however long is appropriate to wait. So if it's particularly busy, and I mentioned this in terms of the other McCaslin roundabout, but there will be some wait if there are a lot of cars, and that's very reasonable. But I think it drives all of us crazy when you go up to an intersection, particularly in a small town, late in the evening, and you just sit at a red light and you feel like you're in a ghost town and you're just sitting there waiting. The poles that they put up, those drive me nuts as well. It's a big pain to slow down on the road and feel like you're taking such a sharp turn. And so I think the roundabout helps reduce speeds that you can safely turn onto and off of Rock Creek Parkway. And I think that it would help congestion, or I think that it would help speeds at the 88th roundabout, as well as going into the school lane up by Indiana during the peak traffic time, because I regularly see cars that don't abide by the speed limit light or the school zone lights there as well, and drive through pretty quickly even during school zone. So very much in favor of leaning into the roundabout, building it out as much as possible, reducing it to 1 lane for that roundabout. I think that it would improve safety dramatically, with minimal reduction to off-peak hours and to flow of traffic and getting across the town.
Thank you.
No.
So I don't really have much to add. That gentleman pretty much, I think, summed it up quite eloquently. I do have a question or a call out. I looked at some information prior to coming in here that I don't think you guys had on the slides around the cost. And if I remember correctly, the actual long-term maintenance cost of the traffic lights are actually more expensive than the roundabout. So it would actually be cheaper for us to have the roundabout long-term. Is that correct?
Yeah, we didn't, we at one point we had a slide about maintenance costs. We took it out just to try to shorten the presentation. Yeah, you're correct. Traffic signals have a higher maintenance cost than roundabouts.
Great. So if what I'm thinking about this, and I'll get into my story in a second, is, you had these goals that you presented to us when we first started, right? And I think about all of the options in the context of the goals. And I think the goals are primarily, I think a lot of people have said this, reduce speed, increase safety. And if you look at the goals and you look at the options, it's pretty clear from my standpoint that the roundabout is the clear and unadulterated winner there. And then you take into consideration costs, and it's even cheaper than a traffic light. Well, it seems like a no-brainer to me. So just, looking objectively at the facts, which, I think, yourself and the council should be looking at only the facts. Everybody has their opinions and we listen to the community, but I think it's your guys' job to look at the data and do what's right to support the goals that you have in front of you. I'll speak for myself, just in case you guys aren't aware, fellow community members here, there seems to be an interesting opposition to making some changes here. I live, I don't know if you had the map, but you can almost see my house on that map, like right here. And I have 2 small children, a 3.5-year-old and a 6.5-year-old, who didn't choose, where they built Superior Elementary. They're required to go to school every day. I think everyone's aware of that. And so, in order to get to school, it's nice, we can drive, but, we live in the community we live in because it's amazing. The way it's been developed and designed is amazing for families, and I feel really fortunate to live here. However, in order to get to school, we have to cross that road every day, back and forth. And I can speak from my own experience, and I have some other community members, my neighbors here with me as well, repeated instances of my kids and myself and my wife almost getting hit by cars. This isn't hyperbole, this isn't hypothetical. This is my life, and most importantly, my kids' lives. So what I would ask all of you, and you, ma'am, as well, we talked briefly, is, think about the kids. God forbid something like this happens. I understand maybe some people feel a certain way about, maybe it slows us down, even though I think this gentleman made a great point as to why that's really not the issue. Think about the kids. Think about the goals, and make the right decision. It's quite obvious to me. So if nothing else, do it for my family and my neighbors' families and our kids that have to go to Superior Elementary every day. Thank you.
That was well said. I wanted to add 2 things. I disagree on one thing, that there is a perfectly good light directly across from Superior Elementary, and I'm a little confused as to why it's not appropriate to walk through the neighborhood as opposed to going and trying to cross there. And I hope no one was running through red lights when you almost got hit. But I think there's an issue with the crosswalk and people driving quickly there. I don't know that, I don't think this is just about kids. I think this is about opinions and preferences. And that's a little bit my concern. I also want to add a personal experience. At the 88th and Rock Creek roundabout, I have more trouble crossing these 2 crossing points because of the blind curves that get created there and the speed at which people enter there. I think we need to consider that people are still going to speed through the roundabout, and there may be, if we do create something there, please make sure there's not a blind curve and that there's plenty of ability for drivers and people, especially the people, to see. Because I've crossed both on my bike and on foot, and a lot of times people go by and I'm waiting until there's absolutely no one anywhere in sight before I even try. And it's more at that roundabout than it is at the other crosswalks along Rock Creek. I think the roundabout ones are worse, in my opinion. So, but that's personal experience. Thank you.
Hey everyone, thanks for having this forum to share your thoughts and get community feedback. I just want to voice my support for Roundabout as well. I live off of Waldona on Idalia, and so pretty much every single day I take my kids to Monarch, and so every day I'm turning from Coal Creek onto Rock Creek. And usually it's very fast. We've had some times recently where it's been about 2 minutes, and I've actually timed that because they came up previously in a different discussion. So I would say that my 2 pain points are really making that turn, and then also the safety as well. I've got a 4- and 7-year-old too, and we like to walk around the community, take the dog out, and so that crossing is a bit sketchy, to put it mildly. And so I think something that can have a bunch of different traffic volumes and handle that effectively, which a roundabout seems to, that presents a safer option for pedestrian crossings and also has less chance of dangerous impacts if there is a collision, all seems like an ideal fit for this particular intersection. So just wanted to voice my support for it. So thank you so much.
Hi, I'm one of the few people that is for a traffic light. I would just say that you could set it up for being on demand if people are worried about having to sit there for a while. Just set it up for being on demand so people can take off when it changes. The other thing is I see a lot of people going through the roundabouts in town really quick. They're not slowing down. At the crosswalks that have the beacons, a lot of people do not hit the buttons. So a lot of times they're just waiting for the cars to go by. So it's not all the driver's faults because we don't see them hitting the beacons to set them off. And the other thing is, just in general, I'm tired of hearing about how the roads were designed for bicyclists. I don't see anybody in town riding a bicycle around here. So I just had to share that and get that off my chest. Thanks.
My name is Chris, and I ride bikes with my kids through this intersection quite often. We live right here. We use this intersection sometime between 2 and 20 times a day, depending upon what's going on with our kids. Crossing Rock Creek Parkway is absolutely treacherous, and there's no way we would ever allow our kids to cross it on their own. And we've got a 7 and a 12-year-old. One of the things, I also sit on the Public Art Advisory Committee, and doing this whole project is a great beautification opportunity, and doing nothing, doing a traffic light or reducing the right-hand turn lanes, in my opinion, is really a missed opportunity for beautification here as well. We would also, as a family, love to be able to take advantage of this corridor to get to the new downtown. So doing nothing, in my opinion, is really not a great option at all. We really do, as a family, support the roundabout idea, and we think it's great. It also gives us more landscaping or opportunities for public art.
Good evening. My name is Suzanne Devaney. I'm a resident of Rock Creek. I live up near Amherst, but I'm also a member of the Board of Directors for Mountain View Fire. As a resident, I'll put on that hat first, I am quite happy to see the roundabout option. I fortunately retired. I don't have to navigate during the busiest hours of the morning and evening, but when I do go out, the left-hand turn from Coal Creek onto Rock Creek can be difficult, and since the posts went in, I struggle with being able to determine, is the car going to turn right onto Coal Creek, or are they going to keep going? I end up spending more time now because I want to make sure that whoever's coming, I know what they're going to do before I make my move. So as a resident, I'm good with the roundabout. I'll put on my Mountain View hat now. People have talked about slowing speeds. They've talked about safety for pedestrians. I'm going to talk about response times. When we get a call, we come, we've got response time targets that we aim for. We're there to answer your call as quickly as we can. And in the case of medical calls, sometimes a minute, a 2 minutes makes a difference. I put this set of proposals on Tuesday to our public safety people because I couldn't really say from a fire perspective which would have been the better choice. I was a little surprised to be told that they hadn't previously provided input on this particular set of proposals. And I can't speak to whether a one-lane roundabout and the circumferences are sufficient for our equipment. But I will say that coming and making the sharp turn onto Coal Creek. In a small car, it's okay. In a larger vehicle, you have to slow down even more. A fire truck, and not just a short fire truck. In this town, we have an aerial truck, which is roughly 60, 70, 80 feet, depending on which vehicle. That's a sharp turn to be making there. That all said, I asked the public safety people on Tuesday to take a look at the proposals, and they came back to me this morning and said that if I'm giving comment, their comment would be that they would prefer the roundabout. So I'm here to pass that along, but I would encourage you to engage with the fire department on this, because while everybody wants everyone to be slow, that's not our primary objective. We want to get where we need to go as safely as we can. As far as beautifying and public art, I love public art, I love beautification, but we need to be able to see all the way into that roundabout. We need to know, are there pedestrians already in the road that we need to be aware of as we come through? Because we don't want to hit anybody. That would make more paperwork than we want to deal with. Believe me, way more paperwork. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. I really appreciate it. And I think mine will maybe add on to that perspective. Conrad Gonzalez, I live on Stoneham Street. I'm not in favor of the roundabout, primarily because of the evacuation ones. You had it on that slide, and I just don't think there's any reasonable approach to evacuating this town. And living on Stoneham, back in that area, it took us 3 hours to get out of this town during the Marshall Fire, which is absolutely unacceptable. And if the roundabout goes, you've just made my decision to go through people's lawns just to get out of this town, should an event like that happen again. Just because I think that's going to add yet another hour to evacuate this town, especially if we live in those areas toward the Lanterns area, or open up Weldona and let us get out that way, which is probably the option that I'm taking to get out. But I just, I don't think the roundabout is practical. I think the other two options are a little bit better, but thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Alejandro. Everyone's pointing houses, so I live here. Yeah, come over for a barbecue. So personally, I'm for the right turn lane. I just think, keep it simple. I do have children. I have a 4-year-old, 2-year-old, and 1-week-old. So yeah, cross sections and all that is very important to me as well. The reason I came up is I want to talk about, we're just talking about the roundabout portion, but you had mentioned implications from all the way from Indiana through 88th and a reduction to a 1-lane for it. And so in the options that were provided, I saw there was like an extension on Rock Creek to make it 2-lane, strictly passing there. And so if residents have expressed that they wanted to not do a 1-lane. Yeah, exactly. So we have, moving this. We have like an extension to a 2-lane there, but we can't see anything past here going through Indiana to 88th. So I just wanted to get more insight as to like what assumptions were made in your assessments.
So if the 1-lane roundabout is ultimately the way it goes, so you would have 2 lanes coming from Indiana, which is left for me.
Okay.
Going toward the roundabout, and it would merge before the roundabout. This is a schematic. It might merge in this area, it might merge before you got to this area, but it would merge to 1 lane just before the roundabout, just like it does at Colton, cool. McCaslin. Once you leave the roundabout from Coal Creek Drive to 88th, We haven't yet determined if it would stay one lane or open back up to two. So part of that has to do with the distance between those two intersections. But at a minimum, it would open up back up to two when you get to the 88th roundabout, as you can see in that image in the bottom right. So it might open up back to two well before that point, but at a minimum, it would open up back to 2 lanes at the roundabout itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand that. Just
Okay.
feel like it's just something, not accusing anyone, but that's being trying to like thrown into it as well. So I think it would be important to note that the possibility of reducing to 1 lane from Coal Creek through 88th is within that roundabout, and that maybe we could try and extend it to a 2 lane. So like, can you go back to the roundabout image? So like what I'm arguing about is, you see this yellow line here with the separation to 2 lane. Be a lot more comfortable if we saw that here as well, you know, going on to 88. That's my main concern about the roundabout. Besides that, I understand all the benefits of it, so appreciate you guys doing that.
Just out of curiosity, what's the preference for 2 lanes?
So yeah, for like evacuation vehicles, or for like evacuation methods or anything like that. Also for like different type of drivers, like specifically posts and during turns. I just feel like drivers get aggressive at roundabouts. Like I've had, especially at the one down next to downtown, that larger roundabout, had like a lot of close calls with individuals there. And so I feel just like 2 lane, I can turn, get out of their way. They can do whatever they're gonna do. You know, we all get through safely in that cross section. Yeah, I just think, you know, if residents have stated like heavily that they don't want a 1 lane, it feels a little sneaky to try and throw in 1 lane from Coal Creek to 88, you know, just being blunt. So, yeah. But yeah, that's everything for me. Appreciate all of you, and thank you for the proposition.
Hello, I live on Riverbend. I know that a lot of people don't, they prefer the roundabout, and especially the 1 lane roundabout, and I would rather have the lights, and the reasoning is that, yes, one of the things is people prefer the 2 lanes, and that's great. I think the lights work really well at Indiana anyway, and a lot of people cross it very safely. Even for children, it's very safe. That's where most kids cross anyway. So I don't see why a light at Coal Creek would be a problem. And, honestly, I think the extra time that you would have to spend at that is not that much more, especially, I think, as someone said, if you make it like based on, whenever some kind of, visual or something that the light is able to recognize it and figure that part out. Rather than having to, wait for too long, you can reduce the wait time for those kinds of things. The other thing the main reason I don't like roundabouts is having experienced the 88th roundabout, that blind turn, I cross it almost every day walking my dog, and it's impossible to cross from the, along Rock Creek on that 88 junction. It's just impossible to cross it. There's so many people turning so fast, taking a right turn there, impossible to cross that anytime. And I feel that given the houses are right there, it's going to be really difficult for any kind of engineering to make the crossing in a very visible spot that it'll be, it'll not be hidden. So I feel that you're ending up going to have a roundabout that's going to be hidden. So that's going to be with the crossing being hidden. So nobody can see who is crossing Coal Creek at that spot. The last thing about lights is it's so much easier, even with, for fire trucks and everything, because all emergency vehicles, because you can just change the light any way you want to at the time that something is happening there. So the lights can be, I've seen this happen in other places, that they can change the way the lights work. So if trucks need to go there, they can very well manage the lights accordingly. So it's, given that broad amount of space, it's easy. With a narrow lane, even with today's, with the light, the white posts and everything, I see delivery trucks taking that turn and always going on the other side of Cold Creek, trying to take a right turn there very regularly. Fire trucks I've seen doing that. The other thing with fire trucks is with lanterns, after, I don't know, this is just anecdotal, but after lanterns has come up, the number of fire trucks that have come across on Cold Creek has increased dramatically. I don't know if there's that many more emergencies or not, but they have happened, fire trucks or emergency vehicles, basically. So I think given that piece of evidence, I don't know if, I think making it easy for everybody, just lights, which is more controllable without really creating any permanent obstructions or anything like that, I think would be a far better solution. That, I know maintenance-wise, it might be more expensive, but overall, I think it keeps the 2 lanes, it keeps everything the same, except that now you're having control of lights, and you have those safe pedestrian crossings, everything is safer. The final part of that is, the one thing that happens with bikes is with all of the electric scooters the activity of electric scooters has increased dramatically on Cold Creek. And with that crossing, it can be pretty dangerous. If there is a roundabout, I don't think it changes the speeds of the electric scooters crossing, and it can be a very dangerous experience for everybody around there. And yes, for small kids, maybe electric scooters is not the big issue, but I see bigger kids and teenagers, and it's really crazy out there. So I think from that perspective, almost all scooters always stop at lights. I've never seen any of the electric scooters not stop at the lights. So I think from that perspective, lights is generally safer even in there. So overall, I think lights is a safer bet at that intersection with current anecdotal data that I've seen, rather than having a roundabout which could cause more problems. That's all.
Thank you.
Hello, I just had a comment and a request regarding the white poles. I know they are temporary. I know you've made that clear. I live very close to the Cold Creek and Rock Creek intersection, so I drive on Cold Creek to turn either way on Rock Creek a billion times a day with my children. And I expected to come here and hear, I had such a bad attitude about the white poles because it's difficult, but I expected to come here and hear different points of view from people who are concerned about the children or for the bicyclists, and apparently it's a pain to them too. And so I wasn't expecting to hear that. So it sounds like it's not benefiting anyone. If it is, please let yourself be known. But I'm just wondering if temporarily, while this decision is being made, that they can be taken down. It's a safety hazard for those of us trying to turn left off of Cold Creek, on Cold Creek, trying to turn left onto Rock Creek, and those going south on Rock Creek, turning into Cold Creek. If you have an SUV or any type, it's just a tight turn. And I'm not talking about speeders, I'm talking about people who are obeying the laws and obeying the speed limit. But even just waiting there at the stop sign, I have had so many close calls, and I've even learned to back up and not even stop full out. Then you can't see in the intersection, so you have to find a place. So many, really close calls of people, and these aren't even speeders. It just is such a tight turn. And I don't know that it's benefiting anyone. So I would just request that you look into that. Take them down. They're not helping anyone in the meantime as you decide what is the best route to go forward. I would ask that you at least look into that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Angela. I first show. I'm in a house like right about here too. So since we're all showing houses, I'm actually kind of newer to the area, so I don't have much experience as far as the people who've been here for years. But one of the reasons I moved here was actually because the amazing bike lanes and sidewalks and accessibility from everywhere. I lived in Houston area, which doesn't have sidewalks, in case you didn't know that. It's rare to find sidewalks, even in the community. Our kids are on the street. My kid's been hit by a car crossing an intersection, which really sucked. So I wouldn't really recommend that. So I'm all for like the pedestrian safety. And I've got, during hurricanes, I know we talked a lot during disasters. I'm also a disaster responder and I'm a nurse. So I've got lots of different hats also on this. So I'm very glad to hear that the fire department, because that was one of my concerns on the sides of the roundabout, if it would slow down their time. So I like the idea of the roundabout for sure. That would be my first pick. If we had to do lights, I guess I would take that because like anything's better than what we have. But to speak as far as like those white temporary things, I only lived here for a month before those went up. I actually thought you guys screwed up something and like maybe they shouldn't be there because I used to work on a mud district down in Texas, so I'm used to dealing with traffic and roads and sidewalks and stuff. And when they explained to me and showed me why it was there, I was like, oh, that's a really great idea. And in the short time that I saw the difference in the churning and stuff, yeah, it's definitely a tighter turn, but man, they slowed down a lot and it made it a lot easier. But after living here for a month, I don't let my kid who goes to high school with his regular bike use this intersection anymore because we've had so many close calls. And he's 15, so it's not like I don't have little ones anymore, but my 15-year-old who was born or who's lived in Texas where there is no sidewalks and has took his own life in his hand every time he went on the road, can't cross the street safely. That's really saying something because like he's used to going through the trucks and people not caring, speeding, and had his sister hit. So yeah, so we're pretty cognizant of that. But I would really recommend, I'd like to see you guys definitely get together with like the fire department and ambulance and stuff like that to make sure that they're supporting whatever decision you guys do go with. And then with the 88th, that blind spot is really a killer as far as like the people going across the street and not being able to see the turns. Like I said, I consider myself a very safe driver when it comes to that because I've had a kid hit and I've even come close to like, you just can't see them. So love the idea of a roundabout, but if we can't have a roundabout where we can see people using the crosswalk, I'd rather have the stoplight at that point. But definitely slow them down because it helps. And when we're looking at the price and everything, I just want to point out that's 2 kids hit. That's the difference in the cost of doing nothing and doing like the most expensive thing. That's 2 hospital stays.
Thank you. Folks on Zoom, we're getting close. There's only couple more public comments, so then we'll get the folks on Zoom.
I'll try to make mine quick. I'm Brian. I live right down Coal Creek Road, so take this intersection every day. So for context, do this for a living for the city of Boulder. I try not to advertise that much. Comes with its own issues, but I really appreciate what you guys have done here. So Kimley team, and the town folks, really appreciate you guys doing this. Couple of things. So the Pitkin example, I was skeptical at first, but I really like how it's working. So I think the changes that you guys made there made a big difference. And so I think it works well. And so I think you guys are seeing that, no complaints, but that is one option. So I kind of would support that. I would also support a roundabout. Not super passionate, but I do see how they function and they work great all over town. And so really good for getting people through and drops the severity of the crashes. So really love that aspect. Shortening those crossing distances, I understand that, things like that. Signal, not so much in support of. I think I emailed Christine, but there's signal warrants for why you would need a traffic signal. I'm looking at Kimley, but I don't think this intersection would meet any of the 9 signal warrants. So really not going to meet those. And I think there's a misconception. So in the city of Boulder, signalized intersections are some of the most dangerous in town. So statistically, we see more accidents at signalized intersections because of people running red lights, right hooks, hitting pedestrians, bicycles. So we're really trying to design away from that. So when we have an option, reducing laneage, going to a roundabout, things like that,
a signalized intersection is usually the last treatment we would possibly want to do. And we're trying to redesign those in the city to be safer, but it's extremely difficult to do. So, you know, a couple of options that I do like, and, you know, I think you guys are on the right track. So we appreciate what you guys have done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very quickly, Mark Spangler, 33-year resident here, live up on Proctor Court, take that intersection 5-6 times a day. Basically, really didn't realize there was much of a problem at that intersection until you put the poles in. I stopped off and saw those little posts, the pylons. 20 out of the 23 pylons are hit. 2 of the pylons are off their moorings right now. So somebody should at least take a look at those. Basically, traffic coming down the hill because of that tight corner. Everybody's got a clear right, clear left. We don't know if people are going exactly what was talked about. You don't know if people are turning or not. So basically, you're jamming up traffic. Basically, it's very dangerous there at this point. It's become more dangerous than it was before. The only thing I ask, I sat on the board of directors for Rocky Mountain Fire for 25 years, was board president, and you definitely need to take a look at that circle when you put the traffic circle in, and I assume that that's probably the way we're going to go. That's the safest way to do it. But basically make sure there's radius there for fire trucks that are getting around, and I think you'll probably be doing that. But you can actually talk to the fire department and all the people at the fire department and get that done. Thank you. Oh, if you want pictures of this, I've got pictures of those too. If nobody wants to go down there and look at those pylons that have been trashed.
No, we'll go look at the ones, especially ones that have been hit.
Built up that a fire truck can't go to, you're gonna have a lot more of us speaking.
So I see a couple hands raised on Zoom. Rachel, we'll start with you, and I see Rick, you'll be next. So if you could unmute yourself. All right, go ahead, Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I live on El Dorado Drive. I think some of my neighbors are in there in person. I just wanted to say that I'm not against any of the proposals. I think I prefer the right turn lanes being removed, but only because I really worry about a roundabout with evacuations, only after going through. And I was lucky, we left early, so we weren't stuck, but I worried about all the neighbors that were stuck. And so the roundabouts, if you do the roundabout, which it sounds like that's the most promising, is please make sure that it's easy for people to tell when it turns into a 2-lane if there is an evacuation. Because there wasn't police presence or anything actually helping us get out of the neighborhood. And so I just worry that people will just go one at a time and it'll take even longer. So hopefully that never happens again. But in case it did, I would really worry about an evacuation. I know we don't have hurricanes and other things here, like where you would have more often evacuations. I hope we don't have to do that again. But I've lived here for about 11 and a half years. So I would really like to just make sure that we're safe and have ways to evacuate, and that we don't put in something that makes it even harder. So thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Rick, if you could unmute yourself.
Hi, Rick Brandel, 25-year resident. I mainly use this area for biking, but I do walk across the street as well. And I've had the unfortunate incident of being run over at this intersection by a car on my bike. So I was T-boned by someone who had actually stopped, and she was looking so far across the street to see if she could get on Rock Creek Parkway, she never looked for cars. I thought we made eye contact, we didn't. Ironically, it's a spouse of one of the board of trustees of Superior who did this to me. So I have PTSD when it comes to this intersection. I avoided it for a couple years, and now I go through it, and believe me, every car knows that I'm there when this is happening. I do want to add one thing that no one's mentioned, the very positive impact of the widening of the bike lanes that you did, in the last couple years. That gives really breathing room for bicyclists that are going along there, especially young kids and things like that. There's rocks on the road, so that's been a huge improvement and much appreciated. As far as solutions, I think traffic signals or roundabout could work from a bike safety standpoint. Eliminating a right turn does almost nothing and certainly wouldn't have prevented my accident. So I think you've done a great job putting together all this information and getting all these comments, and so yeah, much appreciated.
Thank you, Rick. If anyone else on Zoom would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. We'll unmute you. And if anyone else in the room would like to make another comment, we do have large printouts of all the roundabout options. If you'd like to stick around, we'd be happy to stay as long as anyone would like to stay and answer questions or talk through options. We also have cards here if you'd like to email us later. But not seeing any hands raised, thank you all for coming. We really do appreciate it. Again, we'll be here as long as you need to. Oh.
I just want to, so I have lots of personal experience. I've been through numerous hurricanes. The roundabouts are actually a godsend during the hurricanes. So what happens when you get in a light intersection is somebody will go and somebody else wants to go, but then they're teed. They cannot get out of that position because somebody's right behind the next person, the next guy. They'll gridlock themselves. People are not patient. They want to get out. The only option at that point is the people with trucks will jump curbs, and then you just hope that your car got enough space to go through. Roundabouts, you cannot. Like, you might sideswipe somebody, but you're getting out. You're not and they do, they'll sideswipe people if they really want out. But you can't get stopped. Where you get stopped at these T's or weird angles, and traffic will halt and people will get up on the curb, drive through people's yards, which is why a lot of people down south have huge rocks in their yard. It's because it prevents or slows down some trucks and stuff from going through. So the roundabouts, it's a huge difference actually. So evacuation standpoint, when you have inconsiderate people who don't care about anybody else but their family, which again, I get, you're getting out. Your car might be scraped up, you're leaving. We're a light, you're gonna get stuck. So, another thought.
Yes.
What happens now? Are you gonna have another meeting? I understand your schematics.
So we'll be putting the roundabout in next week. No, I'm just kidding. No. So next steps are we will have a survey monkey that goes online, and we'll send that out via social media with the slideshow, the presentation. This meeting was also recorded and will be available. We will be meeting with council on March 10th. Yep, it's actually about 2-3 weeks from now. So if you're welcome to come to that meeting too. There'll be a public comment portion of that meeting. We'll present the feedback we've gotten from today and from the Survey Monkey, and we'll also present staff's recommendation. And after that, if whatever they approve, we will start design. So whichever option's approved, we will then start design to go to construction later this year.
Another meeting again, this is just what the roundabout, what the lights would actually look like.
Yeah, we could definitely look at having another public meeting to talk about which option was landed on and what those options look like in phasing of construction. Yeah, it's definitely an option. And I'm glad Mountain View Fire was here. We definitely have a stakeholder meeting upcoming with the fire and police to get their input on this as well. Yeah, good question.
Please do. We've actually got a new truck that has been ordered that is quite large and long, not large, long. And the roundabouts, our engineer drivers are amazing. I've ridden with them, but it's a challenge. Even the ones that we have currently are a challenge. The fact that they're able to drive up, the low slope inner edge rather than a hard curve does help immensely. But anytime you take a vehicle that long and you're turning it around that kind of a radius, it does torque the apparatus itself. They need to be flexible, but they also need to be incredibly rigid to support the weight of what they're doing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.